Hello, book nerds, and welcome to episode 11 of the BookNerd podcast. Today on the show, an extended interview with Austin Wintory and Anthony Lund, creators of A Light in the Void. Before that, however, a reminder to check out all of the recent content on the BookNerd.com website. These include more author interviews, and those videos from San Diego Comic-Con just keep coming. You can also check out those videos in one place on YouTube. Just check for the BookNerd channel and check them out. Be sure to subscribe to see all the latest goodies from that event and all other content. Now, I mentioned our conversation with the creators of A Light in the Void. It is an orchestra concert mixed with science. That thought alone was intriguing, and after talking to these gentlemen, that intrigue has been replaced by excitement. Now, don't take my word for it. Let's crack this story open and check it out. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Oh, we're deep in the trenches of the chaos of doing ambitious things.
That's one way to live life to its fullest, isn't it?
That is true, and I'm sure after our premiere on October 5th, we'll look back on this time here and say, man, what a great time. But right now, it's dear God, should I be telling my physician about potential, serious health risks what we're doing.
Okay, so just to introduce you guys, we're talking with Austin Wintory, who is a composer, and Anthony Lund, who is a filmmaker. And you guys have been working together on a project called A Light in the Void. What can you guys tell us about this? Because I know a little bit about it, and it sounds ambitious, and I'm very interested in what this thing is. So, what can you tell us about that?
Well, I can give you kind of the foundation, and then I can let Tony finish it off. Basically, as a composer, one of the outlets for my work is performances with live orchestras, symphonies and concerts and that kind of thing. And simultaneously, as a product of that, and also having grown up in Denver, a few years ago I developed a relationship with the Colorado Symphony. And they basically gave me this open invitation to develop a show that they could premiere. And it basically just said, what would you want that to be? And I had a quick and dirty answer of some kind of concert that blends science and music. Because even though I primarily earn my living scoring video games and film, my great passion outside of those is science, and especially the idea of science communication, science evangelism. And so I pitched them this rudimentary concept. I don't even remember what I said, but it was something very basic. And they said, we love it, let's do it. And so I basically started thinking about it in this very peripheral kind of sketch way for a couple of years. And then they started to say, when can we, start putting this thing on the schedule? And it started to materialize and get more real. And I get a text message out of the blue from a longtime friend, Tony here. And I realized this show was, in that instant, I realized this show is missing something crucial. It needs someone who has a profound storytelling sense, as a good filmmaker does, but also a deep knowledge of the science. And you won't find any human being alive that fits that sort of intersection better than he does. So I texted him and said, let's get together tomorrow. I want to pitch something crazy to you. And we got together for dinner and had one of these long conversations. And it was like, from that moment on, we were off and running and have spent the last couple of years developing this show. So with that foundation, I guess I can leave it to Tony to actually say what in the world the show is.
Right. So, like Austin said, we've been friends for a long time. In fact, we met a decade ago on the streets of the Sundance Film Festival in Park City, Utah, because we both happened to be wearing USB paraphernalia, and I was like, oh, like a fellow person of my school, and we hit it off, and so then when what happened with Light in the Void is as this thing was existing kind of only in Austin's mind, and he'd been working on it for a while and thinking about it, and I just randomly was driving around the city listening to NPR, as you do in Los Angeles, and along comes this was like, oh shit, that's awesome. So I texted Austin, I'm like, that's cool. I just heard you on NPR. Like, you know, we're making it. We're starting to be important people now. Yay, or some dumb bullshit like that. And Austin immediately texted me, he's like, we have to meet immediately. I'm like, oh God, yes, we do. So we got together, and as he starts talking about doing a show about science with the symphony orchestra, it felt like I was being lit on fire in a very good way, like a flame on kind of way, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'd been working in science documentary at that point, like about 9 years or so, and I had done many years writing and directing for the show Through the Wormhole, and at the time I was the co-executive producer of this big show for Nat Geo, and I was starting to get to that point in that realm where I was spending most of my days like emailing people and phone calls, and then to oversee lots of aspects of the show, and I was getting a little tired of just the limitations of that medium, and having to tell stories about science for a very ADD audience, and everything has to be like, you know, we have to find the Higgs boson, or the fate of the universe is in peril, or like shit like that. And what immediately clicked for me was, this is a format that nobody's ever really done factual storytelling in before, except they have in small doses. So the live theater, live music world is huge, and it in the past 10, 20 years, it's really expanded its scope of genre. You know, symphony orchestras don't just do like Beethoven's Fifth. They do all these really amazing shows like Pixar Live or Lord of the Rings Live. And then on the other end, you have this new emerging space that we can call factual theater. So these are things like the TED Conference. Live events with live humans where the content, the storytelling is all geared around factual information and science and all that good stuff. And of course, theater's always done biography things for ages, in like one-man shows and stuff like that. So it immediately clicked that like this, we have to do this because what we have, especially with Austin's music and a orchestra, is a chance to really go at people's heart and really tell something that is emotionally rich and inspiring. And that's something that both Austin and I have always seen in science content and science storytelling, and that's what we care about most. And our show is going to have really amazing, cool, mind-blowing science facts, and if that's what you go see this for, then you won't be disappointed. But our creative intent is we really don't care if you come away like learning some new, cool facts about how the universe works. We don't care about that at all. What we really care about is that you come and have this emotional experience where you really get to feel just how beautiful and wonderful the world is through this way of thinking. We want you to develop an emotional relationship and an addiction to that feeling of just how good a scientific inquiry and scientific way of thinking really feels, just how wonderful it is. We want this to be something that people go see again and again because they get addicted to that feeling. And so a way to do that is through an integrative approach to storytelling, where we have there's a classic mythic narrative that plays out on stage with the orchestra, and interwoven to that are three incredible, inspiring talks by these three world-class scientists, and that all is integrated into a well-thought-out, I don't want to say light show, but you know, it's all designed cohesively to take you on a journey, and it's not something that you have to sit and critically listen. You can just sit back and you know, watch it just as you would watch any engaging story well told, or at least we hope well told, and that's where we're doing our best to bring you something really awesome.
Well, it sounds incredible.
Yeah. Thank you.
You were going to say something? Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm a science enthusiast myself, and just listening to you guys...
Yeah!
Especially your energy alone, Tony, I'm like, alright, this sounds even better now.
Oh, cool, thanks, man.
I was kind of wondering why you guys were describing, while you were describing the show. It is primarily entertainment, but you can take away stuff from there. You're going to go on a journey through the void, we'll say. And do you know the 3 science communicators you're going to have yet? Is that something you guys are holding off on announcing right now?
Oh, not at all. That's been front and center of our sort of publicity and outreach for many months. So the story there was my first kind of dry run at a concept like this was that I co-directed a short film about the Curiosity Mars rover just as a passion project. I primarily earn my living as a composer, like I said, but I thought it would be fun to climb into the director's chair for a moment a few years ago for this Curiosity Mars rover thing. And so I hired to narrate the show the acclaimed science communicator Neil deGrasse Tyson. And so when the Light in the Void, which didn't even have that name yet, but when that started to materialize, I reached out to him and said, hey, I'm working on a new thing. Would you be interested in being part of it? And he said, this sounds really exciting and really interesting, but I'm pretty slammed at the moment. So tell you what, here are some recommended scientists that I think would be great. And the first person he recommended was someone that he has dubbed Madam Saturn, which is the lead imaging scientist of the Cassini probe that just recently finished its multi-decade mission around Saturn, named Carolyn Porco. And Carolyn is somewhat of a legend in astronomy circles. She goes all the way back to the Voyager probe working for Carl Sagan. And Cassini is in many respects her baby, and all the famous images that it has brought back that show us Saturn in ways that had never been seen before were of her doing. So I reached out, and she gave an immediate yes. And so it's, the dominoes essentially can all start to fall from there. And so the next name that came on board, actually this was something recommended by Carolyn. As Tony and I started to hash out what the narrative should be, Tony had the idea that this could take on a kind of 3-act structure like a play, and that each act would center around a different kind of hierarchy of scientific knowledge. So we basically could have, like the cosmic perspective, which Carolyn covers as a planetary scientist and astronomer. And then the natural place to go from there is kind of the human level, the evolutionary biology and human origins type level, and history of life kind of perspective, and then, of course, down to the microscopic in the world of particle physics and quantum mechanics and that kind of thing. And so Carolyn said, there's a scientist I've heard about in the UK who could be perfect for this, named Alice Robert. And I went and looked her up, and I said, oh my God, you're right, she is perfect. So we reached out to her and just completely cold called her, and she also then immediately said yes. And I'll let Tony finish it off, because the last scientist is entirely of his relationship.
Right, and that order of scientists too. When you, as Austin described that, when you flip them around and go in a different order, we ended up discovering that you have this great, really feel-good, comprehensive overview of the scope of 13.8 billion years of physical history. So we wanted to have a physicist, a fundamental physical scientist, a human-focused and human-origin scientist, and a cutting-edge frontier explorer. So So it's like you can think of it as like a Christmas Carol of science. The ghosts of science, where we came from and what everything is. The ghosts of who we are and where our biological self came from, and the ghost of where we're going and what lies on the other side of the horizon. Right?
Yeah.
Christmas Carol of science. And so that physicist, I immediately thought of one name, which is hilarious because this is a very, very famous, well-known scientist, like within the science community, who isn't that well known outside of physics. But just to put it bluntly, this is the person who introduced me to Elon Musk at dinner. So, she's amazing. She's a very passionate physicist named Maria Spirapoulou. And
Maria, I'll jump in and say that Tony's right. She's not what I would call a household name in the way that someone like Stephen Hawking was. But of course, 99% of scientists aren't.
Right.
But her reputation is so massive in the science world. The analogy I would draw is that in the world of film composers, all composers tend to boil down to the competition of who's the best ever. Is it John Williams, famous for Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and all the rest of it? Or is it Jerry Goldsmith? Most composers, or at least a lot of composers, would tend to say Jerry Goldsmith because he's an unparalleled figure in film, but he's not a household name. He's as big a rock star as you could ever be in this discipline, but he's sort of almost like the best-kept secret of that discipline. And I would liken Maria very similarly. I mean, rock stars in the world of physics don't get bigger than her,
right.
But the average person may not have heard of her.
Right. Yeah. We have this quaint little moment where we were trying to get her on the phone a couple weeks ago. We had a phone call scheduled, and her assistant calls us. She's like, "We're so sorry. We have to push a couple of days because Maria is." She's going to meet with the president of Japan, and that has kind of messed up our schedule. And we're like, oh, well, we can't argue against that, but we need to get her on the phone. So we she's one of the lead experiment designers of the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland, and so that's another thing that they'll call us and say, oh, we have to delay because she's overseeing an equipment installation at the the Big Bang machine. I mean, it's like it's unreal the level of work that she's involved in.
That's incredible.
Right? Yeah. What we ended up so we went to Maria and she immediately said yes, just like the other three. And then as we were doing this, what Austin and I also realized too was that we were actually really, really grateful that the initial call to recruit some scientists to this was to Neil Tyson, because that's kind of the obvious choice, because he's Mr. Science in the public imagination. But something, and we love Neil a lot. He's great. But something that Neil himself will also admit is that he is a dedicated science communicator and evangelist. But he himself is not a active scientist in the literal sense of currently doing research and writing papers and going to conferences and stuff like that. And that's totally fine. I think it's still fair to call him a scientist and an astrophysicist. But in that literal sense, when we assembled our cast for this, we thought it was really cool that we have this rock star cast of people who are active scientists who are doing research, who are doing these big collaborative projects, and that ended up being a real blessing in disguise, because we want this to feel very like we want these people to all feel like real voices from the front line of what's going on out there in the world, and that ties into our narrative, and it also we think it's really cool that in essence these three scientists are there are three top choices, and they all said an immediate yes, and that felt really cool to us. You know, we like that felt that it was reinforcement that Austin and I were onto something that is worthy of a ticket. You know.
Yeah, this whole thing sounds like something that's never been done before. I'm glad that they said yes right off the bat, because it sounds like you guys are putting together the Avengers of scientists in order to get this show going. And I completely get what you're saying about Dr. Tyson. Yeah, he's a great communicator and stuff like that, and he's got that charisma. I love listening to his podcast and everything like that. But yeah, he's not practicing. Basically, if you were to think of it like a lawyer, if you're not practicing law, are you really a lawyer? Not to say that he's not a scientist, but
yeah, there's a whole category of people like him. That's, you know, like Bill Nye is another example where they serve a very important function, but organically, Tony and I came to realize that our passion is actually hearing directly from the horse's mouth, as it were.
Yeah, and the other thing is too that these scientists, they're going to get the opportunity to do something. Well, maybe they already do musical concerts. I don't know, but they're going to get the opportunity to have this platform to talk about something that they're passionate about, and it does tie into your narrative, but they're still getting that opportunity, which is incredible for them and science in general. We need it these days. Now, you guys did have a Kickstarter campaign tied to this. And I saw that it was very successful. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Now, you guys went over your goal. What is that going to allow you guys to do? Can people still contribute to this somehow if they're just now hearing about it for the first time? Is there any way people can still help you guys? Well,
the Kickstarter. Basically, the long and short of it is that Tony and I worked out a wide variety of possible budget scenarios. Where, you know, if our Kickstarter had been one of those that raised, you know, $1 million and just went vastly beyond our goal, we already were well prepared with ideas for how to spend that. So there are a lot of possible versions of this show at a bunch of different budget levels. So coming in above our budget and doing additional fundraising since then, and also just the fact that Tony and I are also putting huge amounts of our own money, you know, into it as well, to just try to make this thing as spectacularly unforgettable as it can be. But that said, of course, any support that people are interested in offering is massively appreciated. If you go to our Kickstarter page, there's a button right there at the top in the front, very obviously, that says our Kickstarter rewards are still available. It will take you to another site called BackerKit, and all of our super cool science and music themed rewards are still available, and highly encouraged to check out if it sounds interesting.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I would also add to that as well. I mean, we did very, very careful budgeting at the start of this project to make sure that all of our Kickstarter money and any money that we raise from people who are putting their trust in us to deliver on what we're setting out to do, we consider that money to be very sacred. And Austin and I have contributed to a lot of Kickstarters in the past, and we know it can be really frustrating to give your money to a thing and you're all excited about it, and then you get the little thing in the mail like 2.5 years later, and minus a couple of stuff that just never materialized, and the thing didn't really take off, and you kind of wonder, like, well, where'd my money go? Well, we've like Austin said, we've put a lot of our own money into this thing, and we have this massive economy of favors that's going into this as well, and we've earmarked all the Kickstarter money specifically into mandatory expenses that are non-negotiable, and so everything that's given to us via Kickstarter essentially has a multiplier effect of usefulness to this show, because it sounds dumb and dry and boring, but I'm sure you can appreciate just how necessary these things are to get any project off the ground. Like, our Kickstarter money is going into things like music copying. Like just to get all that music on paper in front of the brass section of an orchestra is an insane amount of labor and paper and printing, and and then all those things have to be they have to talk to one another, and you have boxes and boxes of heavy paper that has to get shipped out to Colorado, and all those things add up a lot. And so that Kickstarter money is what really enables this thing to be possible. It is not possible without those dumb, boring, dry logistical tasks getting done and getting paid for, because they involve things that nobody is going to do for free, because they're mechanical and factory floor level. And so if people like the show, then we absolutely urge them to go to BackerKit and check out our prizes and everything that we're offering, and all the exclusives and all the pre-launch stuff at good competitive pre-launch prices, because the more resources that we have, where we can take care of all these little necessary logistical things, then the more Austin and I can put our own money into like lasers and better cameras and fog machines and all the stuff that makes this thing really, really fun and makes it incredible, not just for the people in Denver who see it, but also we're doing a live broadcast on Twitch TV, and we want to make that thing competitive with something that you would watch on any other professional broadcast channel during that time slot of Friday night, October 5th, 2018, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Check their Twitch listing.
Well, it sounds like...
Yeah, I think it's worth doubling down on the point that Tony made there, because there's a lot of people that are weary to give money to Kickstarters because there's been a kind of backlash the last few years from people that promise the moon, never mind them being late and slow on the rewards, but the actual thing that they're funding. That, like if I'm saying, here's $50 to help you make your video game on Kickstarter, I'm supposed to get a copy of, the game and the soundtrack and an art book and whatever else for that. And even if they don't come through with that, hopefully at least they finish the damn game.
Yeah.
And there have been so many Kickstarters that didn't come through on the fundamental thing they were promising. And so that was, Tony and I were really conscientious to say that if we raise the exact number we're asking for and not one penny more, can we still produce this concert? And so that we came up with that number as a way of saying, what is the absolute bare minimum that we can still successfully produce this concert? And that's how much we want to ask for, so that we are never remotely at risk of kind of fleecing people. And so it was all the better then that we managed to actually come out beyond that number, of course. Anyway, it's just that's one of those things I'm super passionate about, because I've seen so many Kickstarters blow up in people's faces and ruin their reputation because they overpromised and underdelivered, and we were just hell-bent on not doing that.
That's great to hear, and I'm sure it's a reassurance to the folks that have contributed. Although I'm pretty sure the audience that you guys are drawing in and the people that are contributing trust you guys completely, and they're probably just as excited about this thing as I am now. Speaking of...
Well, I certainly hope.
Speaking of interactions with people and whatnot like that, recently, San Diego Comic-Con, you guys did a panel. How did that work out for you guys? How was the energy? How was the crowd? Did you guys have a blast?
Oh, man. That panel. We did an official Light in the Void panel, and it was one of the best experiences of my entire professional career. I'm sure, Austin, it was memorable for you too. I mean, you performed for large crowds with uproarious applause before, but I just put my shit on TV and go home and get drunk. So what I can tell you about this panel though was we by this wonderful miracle, our publicity team at Krakauer Group just submitted us, and it came out as the official panel, and we were all like, oh, well, shit, we have to do this. And, we know both full well that, we know both full well that Comic-Con is a thing where people kind of go to celebrate the things that they love, and anything that's really wholly new or people just don't know of tend to get buried in the sea of, like, the biggest, shiniest things that there are. I've been going to Comic-Con. And also nostalgia. A lot of Comic-Con is built around the idea of nostalgia of your favorite superhero movie or your favorite TV show or blah 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 blah, and we didn't qualify for any of that. Yeah, and we love that shit too, but we all know that it's also kind of like it's memberberry con.
Yeah.
And we're something that's wholly new, and just by virtue of we haven't gone on stage yet, and so nobody really knows what a light in the void is. Well, and I've been going to Comic-Con for this, I think it was like my 10th con. So like the very first one, I was a poor graduate of film school, and I drove down and didn't have a penny to my name and like slept in my car just because I needed to be there, and it was so exciting and wonderful. And then on my 10th con, I was there with Austin. We were doing this panel, and it was that in and of itself was really beautiful and wonderful. Well, we start the panel, and there's like 70, 80 people in the audience in this room that holds up to 500. And so my thought is, all right, well, okay, let's just do this thing. I'm appreciative of those 70, 80 people who are checking us out. And we had talked a lot beforehand about we didn't want to do a panel of like, look at how awesome we are. We're just going to talk and banter, and you're going to love how cool we are. We said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to use this as an opportunity this is going to be our first test audience, and we're going to experiment with the show itself. So the panel began just with the hall that it was darkened, and it was just Austin playing some of the music from the show that started us off. And of course, Austin at the time was definitely ill. It's worth clarifying on the piano. We had a piano set up in the panel.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, and Austin was definitely ill, so we just decided, like, okay, we're going to play into this, and God bless him for trekking down all the way to San Diego while being so ill, and so he had a surgical mask on and was wearing a hoodie, and I can't remember, did we put you in sunglasses or not? Yeah, I was wearing. I looked like. That's right. Carolyn pointed out, I looked like Michael Jackson. Yeah. And like completely wrapped up and looking like a very kind of reclusive, paranoid, perfect eccentric, psychotic composer type.
Yeah.
Yep. And so we got some applause from that, and I was at the podium talking, and as I'm talking, I look out and I see that half the audience are like on their cell phones, and I remember thinking like, oh God, this is awful. We've bored them to death. What the hell is happening? It turns out they weren't bored at all. They were actually texting all their friends and fellow con-goers, like, oh my God, come to room 24 ABC. This is awesome. As the panel got further and further and further, the crowd grew, and by the end of it, it was standing room only. And I've never seen anything like that in my life. And the key takeaway, though, was we had this moment where we invited Carolyn up to the panel to tell the story of the Cassini mission and the famous photo that she took on the Cassini mission, and she told that story while Austin improvised music on the piano. And it was such a well-told story, and the music added the dimension to it that music does, and that we had intended from the very beginning to inject into this project through Austin's music. And it was so like overwhelmingly emotional that like it made me like tear up, and I could hear these like other sniffles in the audience. Like we made people like cry during a Comic-Con panel because of the beauty and the wonder of this great story, and it was such an incredible experience to see that we were taking the right direction with things, and we were creating an emotional resonance with this stuff that we love so dearly in that audience, and we just got this huge applause, and a bunch of people kind of rushed the podium after the panel was over, and the staff is really, they're really quick about getting people out of the room, and I found out later that somebody even swiped Carolyn's name card, and I was like, why would they do that? Is it like for a souvenir? And then I found out it's because people do that to then like sell them on eBay. So somebody in our audience was like, I'm going to steal her shit so I can sell it on eBay.
Maybe they're just a big fan of Cassini.
Yeah, totally. And man, we love that. I want that person in our audience in Denver to go try to like steal the conductor score or something.
We had at least one person who came up afterward and said that they were just flipping through the program guide for the Comic-Con in general and saw that there was a real NASA scientist who was going to be speaking, and they did not know who Tony was. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know who our other panelist, the actor Troy Baker, they didn't know who he was. But they were like, I'm going to go see a scientist. And they showed up, and by the end of it, the guy said he was, preparing an email to his boss at work, hoping to take off time and literally fly to Colorado for the premiere. He was so swept into the whole thing that he said, he said, I can't believe that I almost didn't know about this.
Wow, that's incredible. Congratulations.
It was the best feedback I could possibly imagine.
Yeah. Congratulations on that turnout. As soon as you said people were on their phone, I was like, no, they were texting their friends. And sure enough, that's what happened. So that's so great to hear. This, you already said, it's premiering October 5th. That is when the live show is happening. It's going to be broadcast on Twitch. Since it's being broadcast, will it also be recorded? Like, if someone happens to miss that Twitch stream, will it be available, say, on video on demand or a Blu-ray or just something else to help get that out to the public?
Yes. So, actually, you can go and we're going to have a digital copy of the show, a HD digital copy with lovely, nice, mixed, professional audio. And it's going to be absolutely wonderful. And you can actually reserve your copy of that today if you go to litvconcert.com, and you can click on a little link that'll take you to our backer kit page. And one of our low-tier items is the actual show. And you can pick that up for a fairly low cost. Sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head, but yeah. So you can get it there, and that is your best guarantee to see the show. And future iterations of broadcast version or streaming on demand, those are all in the works right now. But I would urge everybody to go to our website, litvconcert.com. and follow the links to get to our backer kit page.
Great.
And also, it's worth mentioning that the long-term plan is to tour this with other orchestras as well. So hopefully, people see it on Twitch, or they would download it, like the manner Tony just described, and then they can solicit their local orchestra if they want to say, hey, you should bring this here. And we're basically actively already in conversation with a handful of orchestras for subsequent performances, and the more that join that list, the better. I mean, the hope is to bring it everywhere, all over the world, so that people can actually experience it live.
That would be incredible. It needs to go worldwide.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And I would also say, like, local orchestras are very, very public-facing organizations. Like, most of them, as far as I know, really love talking with, engaging with the public. So, like, if you just call them up and ask them if they're doing this show, that goes a absurdly long way into getting this show at your local orchestra sooner rather than later. Like it really does go a long way, and you'd be surprised at how few amount of requests it takes for orchestras to take real big, deep looks at a show like this and say, yeah, we should bring this. We should and this is a little bit inside baseball, but the way these things work is it's not like a touring show where we're on some giant bus and we're hauling this orchestra all around the country. We're making everything ready to go in a package for local orchestras. They just get the materials from us, and they have the full capacity to make the show in-house and do it. And we've made that. We're working on that package to make it as attractive and as comprehensive as possible, so that all the orchestra really has to do is just make the decision to do it, and they get all the material. They get the full Light in the Void. It's like a software development kit, right? It's like an SDK. They get the full package from us, and we're working to make it as turnkey as possible, so that it's little additional work on their part to bring this to everybody's local town.
That actually, just out of my own curiosity, in a kit like that, when you send it out, how is that tied to the scientists that are involved in the show? Because obviously they're not signing up to travel the world with this thing, so they would have to be inquired by each individual orchestra at that point?
There's a bunch of different paths for how that can go. We're making a whole catalog of potential options where if somebody wants to do the big, grand presentation the way the Colorado Symphony is, then we absolutely can re-engage these scientists and have them on stage for that. And if it is instead an orchestra that is more regional, or a community orchestra, or that kind of thing, or semi-professional orchestra, there's all kinds of different levels. Then we will have options for huge amounts of the show to be pre-recorded and projected. So kind of like when you go see, Lord of the Rings live and they're showing the movie while the orchestra plays, we will have a large amount of all of our essential components that are being delivered on stage will also have been pre-recorded in interesting and artful ways where the scientists can actually be, represented that way. And then we're also working on other versions of the show where we can employ like local scientists or local science professors, and we have alternate versions of our scripts in order to facilitate that. So the idea is that there's a whole catalog of options, and any orchestra that inquires with us will kind of work with them to see what they want to do and make it happen.
That's incredible. That's amazing that you guys aren't going to lock out the smaller of the orchestras. They would have an option available to bring it to their local community, and that's amazing. That's a great thought on your guys' part.
Tony and I asked ourselves at the beginning, why are we doing this? Are we doing this because we want to spend all of our time on the phone with orchestras and planning, all the logistics of a live show, or fundamentally, are we doing this because we believe in the message of the show? We believe that the communication of science evangelism is something that matters to us philosophically. It's like a social service that we actually think is important. So as a result, the idea of alienating smaller orchestras or orchestras with less annual operating budgets or all that kind of stuff is completely antithetical to the actual reason we're doing it. So we're all about being solution-oriented so that anybody that's interested in this, there's a path forward for them to be able to do it.
Yeah, and I'll also add to that too. We're planning on doing a considerable work on our part just to make a version of this that can be produced by like high school, and we'll make absolutely zero. We'll lose money on doing that, but we want that. But we want this show to be able to be done by a high school orchestra, and we want them to be excited about doing it and think that it's cool.
Bringing science back to the people.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially what's really missing is communicating science as a way of thinking and a emotional experience, and a not just emotional experience, but one that brings profound meaning and purpose and sense of self through its study. I mean, it's this one universal thing that we all have that any culture around the world can point to and say, yeah, this is good. We have right now, right above our heads, traveling at I think 22,000 miles per hour. There is an American and a Russian in space working together every day, and they're like the best of friends and work colleagues. And you just don't have very many other things that can transcend national boundaries and politics and religions and creeds like the quest for scientific knowledge can. And so we want to create something that communicates that aspect and isn't just a vehicle to teach people how things work.
Before we sign off here, what you just said made me want to ask: is that where the name "A Light in the Void" came from?
Yes, you're very astute observer, and this will be also made very, very clear in the show too, and the story that we're telling, the narrative story with this is that the world can be really, really dark and scary and uncertain, and uncertainty is the terror of uncertainty is a fundamental human emotion. I mean, you know the evolutionary story, right? It's our ancestors that were terrified of the things that they didn't know, what's that sound coming? What's that low, bassy, rumbling, growling sound coming from the bush?
Yeah.
Shit, I gotta run away from that. Those are the ones who survive. And so what science does, quite beautifully, is it takes this idea of I don't know and uncertainty, and it turns that into this empowering, emboldening drive, because so much of science is about I don't know. The questions are often more important than the answers. And it's that uncertainty that drives us and empowers our curiosity and compels us to look for answers to these big questions of where we came from, who we are, where we're going, what lies beyond the frontier. So science itself is a light in the void. And not only is it that beautiful new understanding of uncertainty that is anything but terrifying, but it's also this thing that we successfully pass on generation to generation without fail. And we have been doing that for thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of years. I mean, really, the first scientists, and this is just my, my kind of artistic opinion on this, is that the first scientists weren't, it wasn't like the ancient Greeks or Newton or like Egyptian astronomers or anything. Really, the first scientists were the first human beings themselves, because as they came into being and generation after generation, they started telling stories around a campfire that explained a cosmology of the world and why things are the way they are. And they did that to the best of their ability. And they continue to do that generation after generation through the oral tradition and then the written tradition of passing on everything that one generation has taken and received as a light in the void and then expanded upon and grown. And I personally find it very beautiful. If you know anything about Greek myth, and if you've ever been to Athens, Mount Olympus is a day hike. Mount Olympus isn't this towering thing where it's this mystical world where all these gods exist that you can't ever just touch because it's so massive and meteoric. And everybody knew that. So all these stories about all these gods sitting on top of Mount Olympus, you could just walk up and check there, and you're like, well, there's no gods here. But that wasn't the point. The point was to communicate their best understanding of the physical and the human world, and they did that through storytelling. And that tradition continues generation after generation after generation. And so here we are now in this beautiful, amazing present where we have inherited all of the knowledge and wisdom from all the scientists and all the thinkers and philosophers and dare I even say, even like spiritualists and spiritual thinkers who have thought about the human experience. And all that knowledge is contained in this light in the void that we inherit, and it's up to us to sustain it and to grow it and to nurture it and then to pass it on to the next generation. And you don't have to be a scientist to do that. Our show is not about once you see the show, we don't care if you go out and say I'm going to go sign up for science classes, or if a young person says, I finally know what my major is. I'm gonna be a science major. We don't give a shit about that. We want everybody in the world, every layperson, young and old, to see this thing and then to understand, at least emotionally, that everything that we know about the world collectively as a species is in our collective charge, and it's up to us to sustain that, celebrate it, and ultimately pass it on to the next generation.
That's beautiful. Tony, I love your energy.
Thanks, man.
Austin, anything to follow up on that with?
How could I possibly? The reason Tony and I are doing this is because we're so aligned and are thinking about all of this. So everything I would say is completely and totally redundant to what he just said. So I'm going to shut up.
Okay. Okay, guys. So just to close out, social media, either your personals you want people to follow, your professionals, social media for the show, maybe. Throw them out.
Well, I'm a Wintory everywhere except Instagram, annoyingly, where I'm a.wintory. But more importantly, our official Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, which is getting more and more active as we get closer to the show, is LITV, as in Light in the Void, LITV Concert. At LITV Concert should bring you to us on any of those platforms.
Yep. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at LITV Concert. You can, if for any reason people want to find me personally, they can find me at Tony Lund, except for on Instagram, which is for reasons, I am at Mugwump3, don't ask. MUGWUMP, and then the number 3. But really, the best thing is at LITV Concert.
Okay. I'll tell you guys right now that you guys got another backer out of this conversation. As soon as we hang up, I'm going to go to the site and at least get the tier where I get the show, because I need to see this. So.
Hell yeah, man!
Well, thank you. Much appreciated.
Yeah,
That's been the fundraising. That's been our fundraising strategy. One interview at a time. As such, you are our 1,429th press interview, and it's 100% generous people like yourself.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, the show sounds like it's in great hands. There's no need to worry about where the money's going. Like I said at the start, I'm a science enthusiast. This has never been done before, so I greatly look forward to it. Guys, congratulations on what you've accomplished so far. It sounds like it's going to be a great show, and I wish you guys the best of luck, and I really appreciate you guys sticking around so long today. I know you guys are super busy, so from the bottom of my heart and here at Gene Book Nerd, thank you so much, guys.
Cool, thanks, man. Much appreciated.
All right, you guys have a fantastic day, and good luck with the show.
All right, cheers.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
All right, take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There you have it. I really enjoyed that conversation with those two. If this project sounds like something you want to check out yourself, check out their website, as mentioned, at litvconcert.com. Again, a huge thanks to Tony and Austin for sticking around and chatting when they have so much to do for this show. That's going to wrap this episode, and I'll let Austin and Tony take us out.
Hey, this is Anthony Lund.
And this is Austin Wintory.
And we're the creators of A Light in the Void, and you're listening to GeneBookNerd.com.